Giizhgad Giizhgad Nishnakas Mshikan Doram, Miinwaa Bkejwanong Doon Jaba, Anishnaabe Dao, Giizhik Dao, Miinwaa Kinomaagewgamig Dao, Anishinaabemowin. Giizhgad Miinwaa Apachagwa Mnoyaawin Miinwaa. Miinwaa Chimigwechin Dinag Giizhik Mampi Gamatuki Jinagwa Miinwaa Nungwa Gimna Tag Zim Ga Kidiek. Miinwaa Chimigwechin Dinag Gwenda presenters Gamatuki Mampi Manjidiying Winishke. Miinwaa Chimigwechin Dinag Kinomaagewgamig Mampi Ajik Gabijawok Miinwaa Gabizindoyek. Miinwaa Giizhik Kwe Ode Bemadzit Ode Chiwasa Giizhik Kwe O Hawaii Binjabat Dam Gupi Na Ilima Jinkaza Buju Miinwaa. So I want to take this opportunity to share with you all as I welcome you for another day of learning about some of the work that's happening within our community, but not just here, abroad, when it comes to language revitalization. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, can be done. And what we look for, what we strive for is to ensure that inclusivity is a part of this journey, because it's something that we all are a part of. This all belongs to each of us. If it's not Ojibwe Mun, if it's not Anishinaabemowin, it could be a Hopi language, Hawaiian language, Ode, Giizhik Kwe, Binjabat. It is our languages that had been impacted greatly because of the colonial movement that our history has taught us. So we're working hard and diligently to do what we can to help reverse this shift that took place when it comes to our languages. A lot of great speakers that shared so far. I was really happy to hear our speakers in our community share what they did, share what they had, some of their experiences in their life in the language, because it's important. Those are the ones that carry this knowledge and this this sound that we so much desire. So a little background information in regards to some of the work that was done in our community here. It was looking at all the work that has been done, since really the 1970s, and it has been carried forward. But really, in the beginning of the 2000s is when we started to really collectively start to pull things together and come to a realization that there more needs to be done. And one of the pieces that was recognized was the immersion environment needed to be created. So when we're born today, we have an immersion environment that is happening in our homes, but the chosen language is not of our original language of our ancestors. It's it's English. And so how do we learn this English language in our homes, in our everyday life? Is that it's the chosen language that is spoken, and that's what we hear growing up every day. So if we utilize that same concept and think about how our ancestors and even our grandmothers and grandfathers learned the language, it was through that same voice, that same venue, just speaking whatever that chosen language is. And so that's the whole premise of the work that we're striving for, is to create an environment that that is solely in the chosen language. And so in our case, it happens to be Anishinaabemowin. And I'm happy to say, and I was happy to see and be a part of a movement that our community chose to go in, opening the doors to the young ones at the kindergarten level back in 2015. And the vision of this really was a simple one that has been picked up by many First Nation communities and Anishinaabe across Turtle Island, and it's simply to the effect that wii-maadziimgag enweying. It's so that our language will live, and that's really it, and that's what helps us to strive and remain steadfast and move forward. So that's kind of the intro to what it is that we're going to be looking at here during this half hour. It's a snapshot of what this community has endeavored in, and in 2015, as mentioned, that's when we first opened the doors to the junior kindergarten group. And each year, the whole concept of this was that it would grow to the next level. So the first 2 years, obviously, were junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten. And then in 2017, there was the addition of the grade 1, and then the kindergarten would still continue, so on and so forth. 2018, 2019 was our 4th year. We added the grade 2, all the way up until where we are here today. So this is our 7th year. This is our 7th year, and currently the program has 38 students, and we're up to grade 5. It doesn't go without its challenges as well, and it needs to be noted. We don't like to focus on the challenges or the cons, but we do have to recognize that they're a reality. So some of the things that have already been mentioned by our presenter in Ginagwa, Anton Troyer Walgush, he had alluded to a number of them, but it's not just leaving it at the challenge or the con. We have to do what we can to turn it into a proactive move, address it proactively so that it becomes a pro. How can we do that? But it's important to note again, so our primary challenge at this point is that we don't have the ability to have speakers that had grew up in the first language with us all day, every day, in all the classrooms per se. So we have to consider that. The first speakers in our community alone are generally elderly, so it's a bit of a stretch to expect them to be in those types of environments. So we have to work with that. We have to work with what we have there and what they're able to do, and so that they're well at the same time. So that fluency is a big piece of the gap that we have in our Indigenous educational programming when it comes to Anishinaabemowin acquiring that fluency. Then we have challenges that are programming hindrances that relate to credentials. So if we don't have teachers that are certified by a provincial standard or the country standards, that impacts this type of program. So how do we acquire this type of credential that isn't currently offered within the provincial education system? So we have to work at that and see how we can rectify that and reverse that understanding so that we can succeed in the endeavor that we choose for ourselves. And then we have a school environment. So currently our program is hosted within the existing school in the community. And so what has taken place there is that you're trying to create an environment that is solely in Anishinaabemowin, but you're surrounded by Giizhgad, you're surrounded by English. And so that is a challenge, because you're trying to create, again, that environment so that these young children that are part of the program hear the language and feel it and sense it only as much as possible. Anton Walgush, Ginagwa, he mentioned about the resources, the curriculum and resources that is so readily available in the English sense. But when it comes to ours, it's not as abundant. There is more. I'm happy to say that is being created, and they're are champions and advocates out there that are working diligently to do just that, to address that. So that is, again, a pro that we're working towards. Colonial programming and policies. So this is a challenge as well, because our current education programming and policies primarily reflect non-Indigenous customs. So we have to work together to recognize this and find a way to address this and come to a point where there's an understanding that the work that's happening here requires some accommodations. And when we look at turning these into pros, our community is addressing the fluency gap by offering another Matukida, Anishinaabemowin adult immersion program. So back in 2010 to 2014, our community endeavored in a 4-year adult immersion program to help address that gap, that shortage, with the understanding that what is shared in that time, in that period, it would then be shared back with those that want to learn their language. So this gap is a big one. I'm happy to say that this 2-year immersion program is coming back, and we'll do what we can to ensure that we're producing speakers as much as we can possible, that kind of thing. We have our language nest. We had an opportunity to visit our friend Naakmoigeng, Hawaii, to help us with this, to witness this, to see the work that they've done over there. It was mentioned again, Giizhgad, that there's a number of communities that are endeavoring in that concept, that had taken that model to work with their young ones that are early years, to create that environment that is solely in whatever that chosen language is. And so we too are looking to open the doors to a language nest, so that those sounds from the nest will be heard and only heard, in our language. So that's forthcoming as well. And we're looking to partner with an institution that can offer an ECE certification along with that. So that provides an opportunity to help the individuals that are learning the language also acquire some knowledge and skills and experience working with young people, children. The school environment. So we've identified that the curricula and resource materials is not as abundant as the English or Giizhgad work that resources that is out there, but we've acquired resources and support, from our leadership to help with this in our program in the community. So that's a very good plus, a pro, and a proactive move to address that. Miinwaa, Giizhik Kwe, the teachers here, they're determined. So when we look at that that surrounds the school environment, they're working diligently. They're determined to do what they can, the best they can. And so that's another pro that we see, and we witness every day how they accommodate and ensure that these children are getting the best program that they deserve. In regards to the colonial programming and policies, if we're talking colonialism, colonization, then it would seem to stand to reason that the pro would be to address it by decolonization challenges. So when we start to look at where we've grown in our lives, we've all shared similar experiences because of how we've been impacted. We share that. And so I can use myself as an example because I've gone through that rediscovery, that recovery. There's something there that tells us that there's more to what it is that we've been exposed to so far. I'm Anishnaabe, but at there was a period of time that I didn't understand it. And then you start to discover that. As you start to learn, you go through a mourning process. You're hurt, you're saddened by these things that you've learned. Today, there's a very strong emphasis on the residential school syndromes and the schools that our grandfathers and grandmothers had gone through. You recognize that, so that's a part of the stages that we go through. And then you start to dream, you start to vision the possibilities. What can we do to turn that around, to shift that? And then you start to participate in learning the language, go into language classes, and you start to connect those pieces of your identity that have been misplaced are starting to formulate and come together. And then you prepare yourself, you say to yourself, I want to learn more. You start to commit. You make that commitment within yourself and do the best that you can to learn your language. And then our final stage in this journey is action oriented. You start to take that step, that necessary step that is required to follow through with that commitment. And so that's what I see our community is it's at that action oriented point, because all of those areas have been experienced. Now we're doing what we can to contribute to shifting that language shift, so that our language can be heard again, so that it will live. And then our immersion program had developed a curriculum framework, so that's a big piece. This is a direction that is going to be followed. And then in doing so, we're looking for our curriculum developers and writers to start to piece this together as well. And we acknowledge our Indigenous language keepers, our knowledge keepers as well. So we have an abundance of knowledge keepers in our community. They don't necessarily speak the language. They're not first speakers of the language, but make no mistake that Indigenous knowledge that they carry is essential, and it's an important piece to the work that we're all striving for, because their ability to understand the environment it could be in a hunting scenario had been passed down to them. And this is something that is done from generation to generation. And so if they're willing and able to share this with our young kids, this is what we want. And then the speakers that are learning will then turn that around, will transition that and put that into the language. And so there's been a big emphasis as of late, even call it a buzzword, and that's land-based learning. So Kindaskeng Haking. So we learn from the land. And so we have our programming that is looking at, as much as possible, to have our children's learning experience out on the land, because we understand that if everything that our language holds is connected to the land, then we need to be on the land to learn it. And so it's good to see it's enriching for our children. The slide that you see on there right now is in a treaty reenactment, so they get to experience these things. And this one might be focusing on wii-maadziimgag, and that's just the concept of a promise. So they start to learn about that concept. They start to learn about that word to its fullest extent. And then what happens is they connect with that. And then when they see something otherwise, it'll stand out like night and day. Hence, broken treaties. They'll not fully understand what happened there. How did that happen? Because of the teachings that they received around that. To speak the truth is so important. It's something that we uphold. That's the teachings that they receive. So this here is kind of some video footages that we've captured, kind of give you a sense of some of the things that the students are experiencing throughout their educational time here with Anishinaabe Kinomaagewgamig. So they get to go out on the land, they get to go out into their territory and see what it is that they have. They're guided by our indigenous knowledge keepers, we'll say, and these experiences are shared with them, and they start to become accustomed to what their territory holds. This is their backyard. They get to go out on the waters and see what is in their backyard. They get to learn about their connections to creation. She's calling them in, but it's not just the marshland where they experience these hunts for the Giizhgad. It's shared with them that there's other areas that can be utilized to help with their sustenance as well, and they start to become familiar with these areas and how these approaches on how they're able to do this. They start to learn about these methods that are used to attract what it is that they're looking for. They become familiar with the concept of patience and how important it is to be still, to be quiet, because if you're not, you could go hungry. How important it is to blend in. They have an opportunity to go out and experience different types of fishing. During the harsh elements and the cold, our ancestors understood that we still had opportunities to acquire sustenance within the beach, within the water, through fishing. They start to understand that because of this pike here, Giizhgad, there might not be no other little fish around because he'll chase them away. This one here is starting to work on his apprehensiveness, his unsureness. There's something about that Giizhgad that has him a little uncertain, but he's willing to try. Through that guidance, it's being shared with him that there's no sharp teeth there. In jeans, your finger, put it in his mouth. So he goes through that experience. Ba, Mino. So seasonally, the waters, the territory that we have, they start to come to an understanding that it has much to offer. You know, we can see this here, you know, just the beauty alone warrants an educational program to explore this so that they become familiar and they're rooted in their identity, where they come from. Exploring the opportunity and even the possibility of reviving the wild rice. Here they sit in that rice patch. A big unit here provides opportunity again to go into the Ninaticukan, the maple sugar bush. We've seen this was shared in Ginagwa by Wabash, where they were going through this learning experience with his kids, because it's so important, it's so essential for our children to understand this. In the time of Giizhgad Kwe, this sugar making moon, this is what our ancestors have done. So they're being guided by magazine, and sharing with them that we offer our sema, our tobacco, and we say miigwech to Ninatik. We say that because of what Ninatik is going to share with us. That gift, Ninatik abu, minumshkik wabu, all the way to the point where it becomes ziwak from the sap to the syrup. They share in that experience. So every time that they go out on these journeys, these units, they'll understand. It just becomes a way of life after. This is what they do. They respect the life of the plants. Each level goes through the same experience, understanding that medicine, that sema, what it's used for, guided by elders to ensure those teachings are the ones that are being passed down from generation to generation. I think in the context of curriculum that is currently provincially standardized, followed. There's so much within this activity that addresses those areas that are expected to follow, and then some. So from collecting the sap, they start to understand the work that's required, the responsibility, the sharing, the social aspects, working together to do what needs to be done to make that ziwag medan. And then this is the social aspect as well. Really, it's all social, but these are opportunities where you could sit and tell stories and talk about the experiences that they've just gone through, and it'll help with their reinforcement of what they've learned. And so that was our snapshot. And so at this point in time, I just wanted to provide an opportunity again for Mashkuda Nene to share briefly a bit about some of the things that he has seen and the work that is being done here in relation to our immersion program. Now,
we had some questions. You want to check those out, or I'll read them to you if you want, or do you want to address them?
Gindan,
Okay.
read it.
Somebody says, will the new immersion 2-year school program only offer to young students and not seniors and elders?
So what we know at this point is that there's going to be a 2-year program. What we're looking for is to address a gap. So we need to have people that are prepared to commit to that period of time, with the understanding that we're going to be going into classroom environments, working with young children to help them learn the language as well.
Okay, all right. And somebody else says, is Rosetta Stone for the Bkejwanong dialect an option for or a current initiative?
So we want to bring the Rosetta Stone that Wagosh was talking about, Giizhgad, to the community. It's just a question of purchasing the package and making it available for the membership. So currently, because of the program that we're in at the school, it does have a lot of benefits and opportunity right there directly, but also the same for anybody that wants to learn the language. There's another piece here too that aligns with a hub, I guess, in a sense, providing a language hub where we can access resources, offer language initiatives, could be language classes. So that's something that is currently being developed as well. The establishment of a hub, a language and culture hub.
Okay.
So we can offer this to the community.
Alrighty. And there was a second part to that. Will there be immersion programs available for community members for things like Giizhk Kwe, what? You probably know what that is.
Yeah, so that's Tigwading. It's that sugar making process. So during that time of the moon, when the sugar making moon is out, is when we go out and do all of that work. Because of the COVID, we're kind of hindered in that sense. So we really have to work in strict cohorts, as much as possible, adhere to that. But the understanding, again, culturally speaks to all of us together as much as possible. Whoever wants to come out and be a part of the experience is what we're trying to work towards.
Alrighty. I believe that was it for the
Oh,
question.
I just got a question. How much does that Rosetta Stone cost?
So for our membership, it would be $25. So you have access to that. So as Wagosh had mentioned, it's going to be offered on a year basis, one level per year. That's how they have it set up currently. It may change after a period of time. We don't know, but currently that's what it is. So right now, $25 will get you that Anishinaabemowin package.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions for Mino Giizhgad in his presentation?
Hello.
Hello, yep.
Where can we obtain the Rosetta Stone? Do we order it through Walpole or any idea?
Currently, we go right to the Fond du Lac community in Wisconsin. So all of the purchasing will be directly at that location.
Oh,
So what we can do is maybe we can provide the contact information here, so everybody can have access to it.
oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much, everybody, for your inquiries, your questions.